Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Carrie Cohan, and she's had two near-death experiences. And I'm going to let her take the floor. And Carrie, start wherever you like and take as long as you like.
Okay. Hi, Peggy. Thanks for inviting me. This is wonderful. I died twice in 1992 and 1993. And my first near-death experience was pretty dark. I've done quite a few interviews on this now, but I don't think people understand how dark the dark side is. Often we say, oh, you hear that no, there's no devil on this planet, blah, blah, blah. And I can tell you, I've stood toe to toe with what we would know as the devil. And it is such a feeling inside that yeah, it's undescribable. It's such a contrast because you hear people talk about the light and the love and it's so positive, whereas the dark side, it um it's disgusting, it's gross. And so anyways, I met with what we would know as the devil, and it surprised me because I was considered myself a really good person. My mom had raised me to be a volunteer. I had volunteered since I was 13. I used to get, on the bus after school and go to the seniors' home and feed all the seniors. And so I had never tried drugs. And I had drank quite a bit in my youth, but I was overall a really good person. I didn't even have a boyfriend until I was 20 years old, right? I waited forever and I was really beautiful, you know. It was tough waiting all those years, but I did it because I had a belief system that I wanted to wait for that special person. So, when I met with what we would know as the devil, it surprised me because I thought, how could I be here? I don't understand. And I'll kind of jump forward with it. When I saw this evil entity, I understood very quickly that we're in the world of contrast, right? So up, down, left, right, big, small, and my mind kind of computed that, not even kind of, it computed that if this thing is standing in front of me, then there has to be something in contrast to it. There has to be a God. And at that time, I wasn't a believer. And but out of necessity, I called in God and Jesus to be by my side, and miraculously, well, not even miraculously, just for me, amazingly, they were there. And I had God to my right, and Jesus was to my left, and they were just as we envisioned them, right? And as soon as this dark entity, what we know as the devil, saw Creator, his eyes bulged out and he took off. He was gone. And he just disappeared into the ether. And all his little gremlins that were with him, they were coming out of the floorboards. They were like growling, and they all went with him as well. And the room was clear. And I remember asking Creator, why, first of all, did that happen? And the answer was that I was beating myself up so much that the devil felt that he could have my soul, my spirit. And I came to have a quick flash that that's what is going on here right now. There is a battle. There is a spiritual battle going on the planet. And it is a fight for souls. It is a fight for spirits. And so, I felt very clearly that the only reason that I was face to face with him was because, not that I was a bad person, but my thoughts were so damaging towards myself. I didn't love myself. I didn't even like myself. I hated myself. I didn't like my body. I didn't like the curves that I had. I was getting a little bigger back then. And I just beat myself up so much, mentally, emotionally, every which way, that there wasn't much love left back for me. And so that was really the whole lesson, was to start to love thyself, love thyself, love thyself. And in that process, I changed my life over the next year. I moved. I got out of the downtown district of Vancouver, where I was a bartender in probably the most popular bar called Richards on Richards. It was sort of like Studio 54 in the United States. You know, it was the bar of bars. And it was a fun time while it lasted. But when I look back, it was a very dark part of my life as well, right? And so I cleaned up my act. I left the bar, I left downtown, and I moved to a hippy dippy house and communal living. I call it a hippy dippy house because we were a bunch of hippies really in the early 90s. We were all very spiritual, some religious, some spiritual. You know, it was a nice mixture actually. And the conversations around the dinner table were extraordinary. Um, uh, Eckhart Tolle was a regular in the house, and I don't know if you know of him, The Power of Now, but you know, back in the 90s, he wasn't known. Eric Edmeades wasn't known, and these characters, you know, they would come and have dinner, and because the conversations were so enlightening and so beautiful and powerful, so it was a really lovely place to be. And then I decided to move from my hippy dippy house because I met my first husband, and he was working with Tony Robbins at the time. And you know, we were just so young and so vibrant and optimistic, and life was really taking off. And so I was packing my bags and I was leaving my beautiful home with all my best friends in this home. And I started to get chest pains while I was packing. And I think I was feeling overwhelmed because I had only known my fiance 2 weeks before I said yes to marriage. You know, we just knew as soon as I saw his blue eyes. I had had a reoccurring dream. I don't talk about this much. Wow. Okay. So when I was a little girl, I used to have a reoccurring dream, and it was of me and a little boy. And we were in, it looked like the ocean, and there was a log, and we were sitting on the log looking out, and it was kind of cloud-like all around us. It was very etheric, beautiful surrounding. And I was crying because I was leaving early. And I was saying to him, but what if I don't find you? And he was reassuring me, saying, it's all right, you'll find me. And you know, I was absolutely petrified to leave him and leave early because we were such good friends. We were so close. He was my everything, really. And so he had piercing blue eyes. And I'll never forget the reoccurring dream because I had it so many times. So the moment that I saw my first husband, I saw his eyes and I thought, oh my God, there he is. Okay, Carrie, stay cool. It's all right. So anyways, he as I walked away, he said to a friend, you know, who is that? And the friend said, oh, that's Carrie. And she just broke up with someone, so don't even go there. She's not, you know, gonna date. He goes, date her. I'm gonna marry that girl. So he also knew, you know, at that moment. So there I was 2 weeks in, and I was having a heart attack, which is long standing in our family. My grandmother on my father's side died at 32, massive heart attack. My mom had quadruple bypass, 42. Oh, uncles, 8 heart attacks, pacemaker, the list goes on. And funny enough, I don't believe in hereditary illness. I believe in hereditary consciousness. I believe that, you know, thoughts are passed down from generations to generations. So there was a belief system back then that, you know, oh, I come from a line of heart attacks, so therefore I must have one young, right? And therefore I had a real heart issue at a very, very young age. I actually had kidney stones up until the age of 14. And that, I think, stressed my heart. So there I was, 28 years old and having a heart attack. And I made a deal with myself because I felt the palpitation and the murmurs and the pain often. So I said, I'm going to lie down. And when I wake up, I'll see if it's still there. I'll go to the hospital. And so I laid down and boom, this knife pain came in And immediately I slipped out of my body and I was floating, and a big brown bird came and lifted me up and brought me into the light, brought me through the house, through the, up over the house. And I could see Earth getting smaller and smaller as we left it. And I was crying because he told me that we were going to see the council. And prior to this experience, I had an insight from an angel. Angel had come to me and said, Carrie, you're so off path. She didn't actually say those words, but in so many words. She said, you need to get home. You need to change your life. You need to turn this around because they're having counsel on you. And so when the bird said to me, we're going to meet the council, I thought, oh, that's it. I failed. I didn't get my life turned around enough, and they're really going to, do me in now. And I was always scared of the judgment day because I was brought up in a Catholic surroundings, Catholic and Protestant actually, but my father was in the military. So in military school, we actually had Bible classes back in the 60s and early 70s. And so I learned to be very fearful of what we would know as God now. And so, when I found out that I was going to meet the council, I thought, oh, this is it. I'm going back to see that dark guy, and the devil himself. He's like, ugh. And so anyways, long story short, I ended up in the light, and that's where all the lessons began. It was beautiful. The bird put me down on, it looked like a stool, a chair, but it was cloud. It looked like a cloud. And yet when I sat on it, it was firm. And the love from the surroundings also emanated up through the chair and into me. And so I was looking down at this stool going, what is it made out of? Because I've never experienced the feeling, like a feeling nature coming out of a chair. And just then I looked up, and it absolutely shocked me that someone was standing in front of me, and it was Creator. And yeah, he was beautiful. He was just like what we hear, that he looks like, or what we used to see. Like, I actually tried Googling, not even Googling, researching. I tried researching on several different platforms, images of God. It's hard to find an image of God now. I don't know if you've done that lately, but
was this like the man in the long white beard? I mean,
yeah, exactly. A man with a long white beard and kind face, and the shimmering beard, and that's what he looked like. And I had a feeling to call him God, but I also was being downloaded, like information was coming in at the same time, and I could feel that there were thousands of names that he went by as well. So many different faiths and religions and belief systems. And so I asked him, what name do I call you? And I want to call you God, but what name do I call you? And he goes, it matters less the name you call me, as long as you call my name. And that touched my heart, because I realized that he's pure energy and just pure love. So we started to have a conversation, and that's where, everything began to unfold. And I was given these 5 lessons of life. Yeah, it was really beautiful. So should I continue on?
Or did he tell this in audible voice?
No, everything was telepathic. Like, it was like having a full conversation, like what we're having here, but it was mind to mind, thought to thought. And yet it felt like I was speaking, but I wasn't actually speaking.
I experienced it.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
My second NDE, yes.
Oh, wow.
That's exactly what you mean. I heard his voice. It was firm and authoritative, but loving, but yet it was telepathic. But I heard the voice,
yes,
but it wasn't like you see lips moving and like that. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say it's firm and authoritative, because I skipped a part when the devil had ran. I went to bed, and I had cleaned myself up because I had vomited. I had choked on my own vomit. That's how I died the first time. And so I cleaned up the sheets and stuff and put them aside. And as I was doing that, I looked up. I laid down and I looked up at the ceiling, and this black fog was coming in and filling up the room. And I started to panic. I thought, oh no, the thing's back. And it's kind of funny because I was thinking to myself, maybe I didn't actually experience that. Maybe, I mean, this is seconds after Creator and Jesus left. I was already doubting. Doubting Thomas. I was already starting to go, I don't know if that.
I think that's a sign of sanity, though. When we have to kind of take our pulse and say, is this real, not real? Well, I think a crazy person would just be out screaming in the street or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So when this black fog came in, all of a sudden it was like, no, I believe in God. Okay, I believe in you. Come back, play, because I thought that this was the devil coming back. And it turned out, I got on my knees. I prayed with such conviction, like I've never prayed before. And the black mist fog, it just kind of crawled down the walls, and it was filling the room to the point that I couldn't even see out the windows any longer. And so as it was coming in, I finally gave up, and I thought, oh, I've tried everything. And so I flopped on the bed. And as I was flopping on the bed, this big, booming, deep voice came in and basically said, you're safe. Just relax. Lie down, relax. And it was something to that effect. I have it written down. I don't remember what it was verbatim. But anyways, the voice was so authoritative that I was like, okay, I'm going to lay down. I'm just going to trust this voice.
They told you to calm down.
Calm down.
They told me to calm, and God told me to calm down too. And I was
really?
I was hysterical.
I don't know your story at all. I'm looking forward to
so that's so funny
about
that I was told to calm down, and it was a firm, male, loving sort of voice. It said, "I need to calm down."
Very loving. Yeah. Well, all of a sudden, I started to be engulfed by this black cocoon, and it turned out to be the black void. So what I saw was there was a white void, a gray void, and a black void. And the black void is where all illusion begins. And so when I was floating in this black void, that's where some of the lessons started. And it was waves of wisdom would wash over me. I all of these terms, they were given to me. I've never thought, oh, I'll call it waves of wisdom. It was as my thought would go out, it would go out over these waves that went to like a horizon, a summit, right? And immediately, all of a sudden, these big waves would come back rolling across, and I thought I was going to be hit by them, but they just washed over me. And when they'd wash over,
very similar.
Really? Wow, I've never had anyone. I've never met anyone that's had the same.
I had my first NDE. I had drowned when I was 5, and it was like, oh, I would get this anger and this rage and these thoughts. And then it would be just like a wave would just like take it away from me, wash it away from me.
Totally. Yeah. And knowledge would come with that wave.
Yes.
And so, I heard that it's waves of wisdom that would just wash over. And they showed me so much during the time that I was in this black void. And I'm Aboriginal. I'm Métis, so Canadian Native, right? Canadian Aboriginal. And I'm Ojibwe and Cree. And so when I was in my 20s, I started to study the Native culture, even though at that time I didn't even know I was Native. It wasn't until my 40s when my mom passed that her best friend shared everything. My mom was in residential schools and she went through a lot, but she never spoke about it. Never told us we were Native. She didn't want to face it, right? So naturally, when I was in my 20s, all my friends were Native growing up. Just funny how it was like a magnet. All my best friends, they were all Aboriginal First Nations. And so when I was in my 20s, I started to attract elders, and they would give me great wisdom. And one of them taught me that Raven is the gatekeeper of the black void. And I had never heard the black void, and here now I was in my near-death experience, floating effortlessly, like on a, on a float tank. Have you ever been in a float tank where you just float and you can't see anything? That's exactly, couldn't see my hand in front of my head or in front of my face. And so as I was floating in there, I asked, so is this what my elders spoke about? That this is the illusion, where all illusion begins, in the black void. And I heard, yes, this is the black void. And so you couldn't have negative thoughts in this black void. It was really interesting because I was so used to having negative thoughts that I naturally tried, and it was like, oh, there's nothing coming up. It was like Creator was absolutely stopping those negative thoughts, and instead I learned to train my brain to, in a very brief moment there, to start to exercise and think positive thoughts. And so they taught me a lot about, the mechanics of manifestation. I saw a memory of my first date with my first husband, and we had a very strange experience. I think when you have such levels of love, intense levels of love, you can do anything and everything. And so we stopped time. On our first date, we had a lot of weird things. Not weird, I don't like saying weird anymore, but we had a lot of interesting things that happened.
Supernatural, maybe.
Yeah, in supernatural that were happening. And I don't know if they're even supernatural, because I think we all have these abilities. I think we all have, right? We have the 21 strands of DNA that are dormant within us. And so if we were to actually step into using, instead of 1 or 3% of our brains and our capacity, if we actually stepped into it, man, what we could do. And so in that level of love, the reuniting of this beautiful soul that I had known from the other side, and I was so excited to come to meet again, right? Things happened. So one of them was, as he was walking, it was like a cone shape, it came out like this, and it was a cone shape, like, in the movie theaters where back in the day where the projection would go out to the screen, and it would be cone shaped, but it was see-through. That's what I saw in his third eye. And so I could actually see a movie playing out in front of him. And I thought, wow, that is so strange. That's, I didn't say anything at first to him because I thought, this is our first date. He's really going to think I'm crazy. And I didn't want him to bolt for the hills. And so I just watched it. And in the black void, they showed me the memory of this, and they then broke it down and said that this is the mechanics of manifestation, that your thoughts, you actually project out like a calling card, and they project outside of you. We don't see it often unless you're in a heightened state of love. And that's when you unlock everything around you. So, so many people are saying, what do I do on this planet? What you simply build that muscle of love. Love not only yourself, but everything around you. When you come from an utter place of love, everything will start to open up. And so the mechanics of the manifestation, I saw that ideas start in your gut and your heart. And it's like an idea will spark, and it runs through your nervous system, and it goes up to your third eye, and it ignites like, what does Abraham Hicks call it? She calls it a rocket ship of desire. And that's what it looked like. It came up and went into the pineal gland, and then came zooming out, and it opened up like this cone. And as soon as it did that, little fibers came out, like gossamer fibers, like really silver threads. and different colors. There were purple and pink and green and all kinds of different colors. And they would go zooming out looking for corresponding people, places, things that you were wanting to create. And they would then bring back those people, places, and things to you to manifest whatever it was that you were desiring. So I got to see the actual breakdown, the mechanics. So now, whenever I want to manifest anything, it's really quite simple because I just feel it in the gut. I see it coming up, and it's like that light bulb moment, the spark within, and I allow it to go out. I actually feel those threads going out and looking for corresponding, and I trust that whatever it is I'm desiring will bring back the best, and highest good for me and all concerned. And so that was the biggest lesson in the Black Void that was given. And so then, like I said, a year later, I ended up dying again from the heart attack, went to the White Void. And as I was speaking with God, he started to walk away from me, and he was walking over to like an open space. And I looked back at Jesus. Jesus was by my side as well by this time. And
did he look like our typical Jesus?
He looked like the Prince of Peace, the painting Prince of Peace. Okay. When I first saw Akiana's painting, I actually burst into tears because that is the Jesus that I saw. He was absolutely beautiful, and such a I don't know. There's something really
I only
special.
saw Jesus from behind. He stood waiting for me, and I seen his hair, brown wavy, shoulder to thin. And then at the end of that NDE, I was sobbing at his feet. And when I tried to look up at him, all I seen was still this white.
You couldn't see. Yeah. I get that. Yeah, because it was kind of similar. I was sitting on his lap, and he was showing me the power of words. And he said, every language has, it's like sacred geometry within the words. And so each word there are certain words that are extremely powerful. Like, and it wasn't until later I came back, I saw je suis is actually Jesus. And that is I am. Je suis is I am. And that's Jesus, right? And so, but he showed me all kinds of words. And this is in 1993, before we were doing all of the breakdown of, I don't know, like, yeah, there's so many words that you can break down and make other words, like nowhere is now here, right? And turn the words around. Anyways, I wrote about them in the books. There's a whole chapter on that. So anyways, with Jesus, it was mind-blowing, because he was taking words and saying there is power in your words, and you have to be very cognitive of the words that pass your tongue, right? Because they can either build your spirit up and make you more magnificent than whence you came, or you can actually, what I saw was, destroy your spirit, and then you be leaving back to the light worse off than whence you came. But again, in the Black Void, I heard
what you
from
just
the voice.
said. But you just said there about you could leave the white light worse than what you came. That's a big sentence, if you think about that.
Yeah.
Like, so is that what we do? It's like
that's why we're here.
When we're born, we leave the white light, and the thought of being worse, going back and being worse than what we left.
Well, that's why they were having counsel on me, because I was in such dire straits, and I was such a beautiful little sprite when I came here. I was just so optimistic and so loving, as all children are, but beaten down over time. I was molested when I was 3, gang molested, and and just it was.
I wondered when you said how you hated yourself. A lot. When you said you hated yourself and those kind of things, I wondered then if you had sexual abuse.
Well, it was because I had an abortion, and in the 80s, when you have an abortion, well, first of all, getting pregnant out of out of wedlock, I should say, that was a pretty horrific thing to do, very shameful thing to do to your parents and family, and his family especially, because my family was very down to earth, I guess, and my dad was in sports medicine. He was known in Canada. My mom, she was like a naturopath, but my mom had been through so much herself. She not pompous by any means. Whereas his family, they came from the upper crust, British family that, child out of wedlock, oh, that was not a cool thing. So I ended up having the abortion. And what was the kicker was just prior, when I knew I was pregnant before I had gone to the doctor, because I had a lucid dream where you're awake and you're asleep. And I saw the baby that was coming, and I heard her name. It was Penelope, Penny for short. And I smelt her, I held her, I felt her, I knew this infant. So when I had that abortion, it killed me. It literally killed me as well. And yeah, so I beat myself up. I drank for 4 years, very heavy, and I just wanted to die, right? So I think I was doing what they call it, like slow suicide, voluntary suicide, yeah, where I was just trying to beat myself up.
Is
So
that what led to the vomiting and the NDE, the first
yeah,
NDE?
yeah, exactly. I died choking on my own vomit. And still makes me clear my throat. you know it wasn't fun. Yeah, but
Did you go
it
to
all
the
served its
hospital or
purpose,
anything with
because
that?
I believe that there are no accidents. No, and that was the other thing I asked, am I dead? When I was on the other side during my second death, I said, am I dead? And they said, you're neither dead nor alive, but you have a choice of whether you return or not, because you can pass on, you can actually not return, but we would rather you return because you have too much to do. And I remember thinking, well, I'm a bartender, a drunk. I failed grade 12. I was learning disabled. I didn't know it at the time. And I just felt like a failure. And so they showed me through a hologram. It was a sphere that popped up in front, in between us. And it was a glowing sphere, and in the sphere was a cube, and in the cube were 4 pyramids that all came to a point, and that point lit up, and you could actually see movement in the point. And the moment that you looked at that point, that light, you would get sucked into it like a hologram. So I fly through, and immediately in this incident, I saw my 2 children that were to come, which was really amazing, because I had so much scar tissue from the abortion. I didn't think I was going to have any children. So they knew, they being Spirit, Creator, and the Council of Men, they knew that I wanted to be a mom more than anything else. And
Scar
so they
tissue, did
showed me.
they butcher you?
Yeah, they butchered me, but good. Yeah, yeah. So that's a whole nother story. So anyways, I was told that I wouldn't have any children. There was so much damage done. And as it was, I had difficulty with birthing, extreme difficulty with, bleeding and holding on to the babies. But they came through, and they're healthy, and now they're taller than me. So,
The series Yellowstone, I don't know if you watch it, but it's real
yeah,
popular.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just so amazing to me sometimes that it's really about abortion, because the girl on there can't
yeah,
deal with the abortion, and they had butchered her, and she can
yeah,
no longer have children. She's just walking around
yeah,
like so angry. And it makes you wonder
yeah.
how many
Well,
women are like that.
yeah, I think fiction reflects nonfiction a lot in life. And Beth, I love her story in the end, because so many of us can relate to it, how it leaves you so dysfunctional after the abortion. And some people think that, oh, you go and you have an abortion, and it's like, oh, I'm done, but I think energetically, psychologically, majority of women that go through that, they must feel it's an emptiness inside because there is love growing within you. And but I also understand, without judgment, I also understand that it had to have happened the way it happened because what happened next in my lifetime. And when I look back, I actually have no regrets about all of that now, because I had to start drinking. I had to meet with the devil so that I could meet with God and Jesus, and not be an atheist anymore. And then I had to go into the white light because they kept saying, you got to go back. You got too much to do. And I like I said, I was like, I'm a drunk, you know. I failed grade 12. I was in the dummy class in grade 8. I was told I was lazy all my life. I'd never amount to anything, the usual story from teachers, many teachers. And so I didn't think, I would amount to anything. But as it turned out, they showed me my 2 girls. I was so motivated to come back. I was begging them to come back. And so they sent me home. And as I came home, some really beautiful things happened. And I'll fast forward. 2 years later, I ended up having my first child. And 2 years after that, we were living in a mobile home park in northern British Columbia, Canada. I mean, real north, like towards Alaska, right? We were north, and it was rough conditions. So I was in the trailer, and my little one, she was 2, she was in the crib, room over, napping, and I heard the floorboards creak behind me, and I turned around, and I happened to be cutting salad with a knife, and just at that moment, I turned around and I had the knife in my hand. It was a long knife, right? And there's a 6-foot guy, probably 6'2", I'd say. He was quite tall. And yeah, I'm not going to say his name, but he was a 3-time convicted pedophile. And he was heading for my daughter's room with the intention, I believe, to kidnap her. So I chased him out of the house with knife in hand. Mama bear came out in me. I was like, who are you? What are you doing in my... And I wasn't smiling, believe me. And I chased him out. And so I started to look into him because he turned out to be our neighbor. And it turned out that he was 3-time convicted. So I started looking into this. I knew a little bit about pedophilia, but in 1998, no one was talking about it. It was such a hush subject. And so I believe that Creator sent me back to do the work that I did. I ended up becoming a foremost expert in Canada on pedophilia. And I brought American laws, a lot of American laws, into Canada. I helped
Because
bring
of
Amber
this,
Alert.
or how did you get there?
Yeah, so because of this, it was a catalyst. So I started having town hall meetings that, this pedophile was in town, beware, be, diligent with your children, because, it's not really stranger danger. 93% of cases are people that the children know. It's a neighbor, right? And so this, in our case, was a neighbor. And so I started having town hall meetings. Then all of a sudden, it went coast to coast. I was on Canada AM and a regular on CTV's programs, news programs and stuff. And so I spent 17 years volunteering as a national child advocate. And I ended up amending and writing 14 laws in Canada to protect children from predators. And then I got PTSD over all of that because it was such a heavy load. Especially in the earlier years, we had no reporting system. So people would, see stuff on the net and they would send it to me because I was the only one in Canada speaking out. I was the very first voice to speak out in our country, and coast to coast. And so, and it was, I laugh now because, Creator, he's something. He's creative, that's for sure. Yeah. because I didn't want to do this. I wasn't a public speaker. I used to hyperventilate when I'd public speak.
I
The
understand
thought
that.
of doing an interview like this, oh,
Right.
I would, right?
But when it
And
matters, it's like we forget about ourselves completely. It doesn't matter. It's what we're talking
exactly,
about.
it's a greater cause, isn't it? Yeah. And so one day I was now living in Calgary, 2 years after this incident, and I had organized many smaller events and, was doing some national stuff, but nothing like what was about to come. And so I kept getting images all day long that I was on a podium and that there were crowds around and I was speaking to them and really becoming an advocate for the children. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I can't do it. My husband at the time was a public speaker with Tony Robbins. I'm not doing this. Let him speak. I'm not doing it. And it persisted until finally I made a deal. Those were the days where you make deals with God, right? Okay, I'll do this only if you make it easy for me. And immediately the phone rings, and it was a reporter that there was a case in Calgary of two young girls, and it was a horrific case. So he asked me about that, and
I call that
he
the
said
power of
something. He goes,
ask. I just want to stop for a second. The
yes,
power of ask. You ask. Like you can deal with this stuff,
yes,
whatever, and then you ask and then watch it happen. Right?
yeah. And then the phone rings,
Yeah.
right? And it's a reporter. And those were the days where reporters were investigative reporters, right? And so he made the suggestion. He said, I think that there needs to be a national movement. And Carrie, you should start something. You should actually, why don't you phone the premier of the province? It's like the governor of a state, right? Why don't you phone the premier of the province and see what they can do? And I thought, great idea. So from there, it just was, I was guided every step of the way. Well, within a week, well, maybe even shorter. I don't really remember, but it was totally organized. We had two citywide rallies, one in Calgary, one in Edmonton. And it was the rainiest day. I'll never forget it. Now, this is really beautiful. It was the rainiest day. I had the police chief and the premier out, all the big wigs. I had a couple of people that had experienced pedophilia as children, and so they were adult survivors. They were speaking to the crowd, and I launched Mad Mothers Against Pedophile, which was called MAP, MMAP. And it's kind of funny, not funny. It's kind of interesting now that the pedophiles are trying to call themselves MAP, minor attracted persons.
Yeah.
And so it's my organization did so much against pedophilia and for children, and it was called MAP. So anyways, I launched it.
Have you seen the movie Sound of Freedom?
Not yet, no. I don't
Awesome.
know if I honestly don't know if I can, because 17 years of pedophilia, I've seen probably the worst of images, because especially, like I said, initially, people would send me this stuff and I'd open it and I would see and hear things that no human should see or hear and no child should ever experience.
Right. I think it's a call
And
to action, though, the way I took the movie.
oh,
Call to
absolutely.
action. There's a message
Yeah.
at the end, and you just so I send this to all your friends and family. Let people know how
Yeah.
bad this is getting.
Yeah. Well, for me, I had the PTSD from that. And I think that I have to watch myself
They
of
need to
not
make a movie
triggering
about you.
it
You need to
again.
contact the people that made that movie and say, "What about me?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a story. It's
I mean, I'm
death
serious.
threats. I can't tell you how many death threats I had, and running with my child in the dark. Yeah. Yeah.
I would if
It's
I was
it's
you. The
a
Angel
it's a real,
Studios. Angel Studios. I would contact them.
yeah.
Say, what about, here's my book. Here's
Okay.
my story. I don't know if your book is just about your NDEs or this whole thing.
At the very end, it talks about what I came back for. There was an article written about me, and I included that article at the very end. Yeah,
I would. I
but
really
it's
would.
interesting that
I
you're
hope you
saying
do
this,
that.
because remember how I said I did an ask, and then the phone rings. The last 2 days, Sound of Freedom is being everywhere on the net, and I keep hearing they should actually look at your story. You should actually,
Really?
not actually, but you should incorporate your history in with this, because it brings it to another level. And especially, I've worked with the last 5 prime ministers. I've sat on round tables with them. I was learning disabled. I mean,
I
I
know.
was a
I get you.
dummy in grade 8,
Yeah,
and
I get
here I
you.
am with the prime ministers and giving them shit. Forgive my language, but there were a lot within the government that I would question their motives, what they
Mhm.
were doing.
I
And
understand that.
yeah, yeah. So yeah,
See, my
so
book is
it's
an
been a
NDE
journey.
book. It's also about child abuse and child
Yes,
welfare corruption. So we got a lot in common.
absolutely. Do
I
we?
mean, I didn't
Yeah.
make 14 laws. I wish I could say I did. I couldn't change, not for lack of trying. I'm still
But
trying.
you are changing, you're changing a lot through your channel here. You're changing lives because you're opening up people's minds to what is right in front of them, right? And
Yeah.
within them.
And my channel is starting to get a social work flair to it, like
Yeah.
this, what we're talking about. It's not just about,
Yeah.
oh, look at me, I had NDE.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, look how I was called to action and look what I care about.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Ironically, after doing all the 17 years of volunteer work, I never took a dime. I was like one of our politicians in the United States, never wanted to be on a payroll of anyone, right? Never wanted anyone to be able to say, Carrie, this is what you have to say. I only listened to the big guy upstairs. So, and it was beautiful because I would pray before a hearing, in Parliament in Ottawa. I'd sit in front of the Justice Committee of Canada. There'd be 4 witnesses on a particular bill, and I was one of them. With always, it was lawyers, it was a president of the police association, the head of the child crimes unit out of Toronto. These were heavy hitters, and
And you
me.
couldn't pass 12th grade.
And I couldn't pass
Pat
12th grade.
yourself on the
Yeah,
back.
right.
See, the name of
Yeah.
my
My
book is
grade
called
12 teacher, she sat me down and she said, You're never going to amount to anything.
the name of my book is called The Will of a
What was
Wildflower.
that? It
The name of my book is called The Will of a Wildflower. Just for
wonderful.
what you're
Will
talking
of a
about right
wildflower.
there. The
Okay.
will. We cannot be the smartest,
Yep.
the best at anything. Everybody's told us we're stupid. But if we have a cause,
A will.
right, we
Mm.
will it to happen and we won't
Yeah,
stop till it happens.
absolutely.
It's not
Yeah,
intelligence,
absolutely.
it's our soul.
No, no, it's the energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Makes me burp.
Makes
Yeah,
me
it's the
perfect.
energy. It bubbles
I've
up,
never been
right?
told that on the show
Yeah,
before.
yeah. I burp and that's how I release stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all energy, right? So when you're saying something that it like releases stuff within, and it bubbles up. So yeah, it's, I don't know, creator comes, like I said, creator is creative. And I wouldn't be surprised. I sold my story in 2013, and it was for a woman's channel. It was a huge network, massive network. But the network, oh, you froze up. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you see me? Uh-oh.
Oh no. Okay. Yep,
Okay.
but you
Good.
froze up. Yep.
Okay.
So there's that energy again. Yeah.
Yes.
So
I gotta tone
in
it down.
2013, yeah, right? Yeah, exactly.
Because
Now we're
I'm
getting
like,
excited.
ideas. Oh, what do we
So in
do if we do
2000,
that?
oh my God. Yeah. So in 2013, I sold the rights to my book and for a movie. And it was going to be a made for TV movie about not the near death experience, but about the pedophilia work. And they sat on it for 4 years. And in 2017, I phoned and I said, the rights are expiring next year. What's going on? We were supposed to actually have the script written. 2014 was the script, 2015 was production, 2016 would be editing, 2017 they were planning on releasing it. And this was a big producer, right? many would know his name. So anyways, he said that the network was bought out by a foreign government that has a history of atrocities, we'll say, okay, and billions of people, and they don't believe in near-death experiences, or forgive me, the pedophile stuff, right? They didn't want to talk about, the pedophile stuff, so they kiboshed it, and so it's been sitting on the shelf. So anyways, it expired. I got to keep my deposit for it, which really helped me out then. I struggled with money a lot in my life,
You were
and
going to pay for the
it
movie
was funny,
yourself?
money would come. Yeah. So now, we're getting to a point that, yeah, it's time to actually create this as a movie and have full control over it.
No, it's not like
Because
you're.
I worked in the film industry.
Oh, you did.
What's that?
You
Yeah,
worked in
I was a
the
casting director.
movie.
So I always had like three jobs at once. And so I was a casting director. I produced Japanese commercials in Canada for NHK out of Tokyo. And uh, I just worked in film. I did a lot and a lot of different aspects. Don't tell me you worked in film.
I'm fascinated by that because I'm thinking you said maybe now you could go ahead forward because the timing is
Exactly.
right now, right? The timing
Yeah.
is right
Yeah.
with this movie just
Yeah.
coming out.
And my daughter's a script supervisor in Vancouver. She's one of the most
Girl.
in-demand script supervisors in Vancouver right now. So, with her connections, yeah, I think, okay, Lord, I'm ready, and watch, it'll happen. Yeah,
Excited.
yeah,
I
it's
hope I
time.
pushed you in that direction a little
Well,
today.
you most definitely did. This interview opened up my mind to it and my heart more so, because
So
it's time. It's such an interesting story. Like I said, it has all aspects. It has the first thing that when I met with that producer, he said, we need to know, did anyone die in the process, or were there, threats? Were there? I said, oh, I had so many death threats. I've been chased by helicopters. I've had government officials that have threatened me. I exposed one of the biggest pedophile rings in Canada, on a global scale, and
I'm
it
messing with
involved,
on here.
yeah, it involved, some of the, what do you call them? A premier, judge, head judge, Supreme Court, senator, you name it. Uh, the media, RCMP officer. It exposed a lot of people. So I had a lot of enemies for a while. I actually had to go into hiding and have an unlisted number. And even my unlisted number, guys in prison would phone it and give me death threats over the phone. And I was in hiding. So how they got my number, right? Hmm.
I
They have
just
ways. Yeah.
love this interview. I am just like walking on air right now. The fact that you and I are talking about this and there's a possibility that a difference could be made. And what brought us together
Yeah.
was NDEs. And, me having
Right.
been a child abuse investigator myself, like I said, I had 60 foster kids and adopted 10, and I'm still fighting the system. I've been fighting for 30 years to bring out the corruption in the United States in the child welfare system. I mean, in this last year,
Yeah.
more than ever,
Yeah.
because my grandchildren are in custody. Um, and
Mm.
so we go to court in like a week. And so this is meant to be. I mean,
Absolutely.
we are so meant to do something.
I
And
agree.
I don't know why some people get sent back and why others don't, but we all come back feeling like there's a purpose.
Absolutely.
We all
And I
come
didn't
back
know what
asking,
my
what am I supposed
purpose
to do?
was.
Yeah.
And when my mom always said, today's tragedy is tomorrow's blessing. So when the purpose started to reveal itself as a tragedy or a near tragedy, because, the guy was in my house trying to kidnap my daughter, I mean, I didn't see that as a life purpose at first. Oh, my ears ringing. Wow, wow. Uh, I didn't, it's like bang on, but over time, I started to realize, wait a minute, I can make a difference here. I'm being asked to make a difference here. And so I had an interview once and they said, did something happen to you as a child? Because you are just like really bent on making a difference for these kids. And at the time, I didn't have full memory. I remembered up to a certain point of my
You were thinking you're
molestation,
doing
but
it for your daughter, didn't you?
I thought it was all about my kid. And it was, I was at an event, T. Harv Eker, I was running his cameras, filming an event for him. And he was doing a closed eye process, and he was off on some other tangent totally. But I was relaxed as I was watching through the camera, and all of a sudden the memories started to come back. And it was like, whoa, total memories, like full-fledged. And even in my near-death
PTSD.
experience, yeah, even in my near-death experience, I saw up to a certain point, but I never saw beyond. But they said when the time is right, the information will be downloaded to you. So that's why I was so I knew inside, mentally, physically, psychologically, every which way, spiritually, what molestation does to a little one, right? And especially 3 years old, and the health issues that I had subsequently, right? For
I
years.
think PTSD isn't a bad thing, because I think if
Yeah,
this is my own personal opinion now that I can say this, I've
yeah.
never said that before, but now, because I think it's God trying to get our attention. Remember
Mm-hmm.
this, remember
Yes,
this. I'm like, why won't this leave me alone? And then I realized I'm meant to tell it. I'm meant to talk about
absolutely.
it. I'm meant to expose it. I'm not meant to sweep this under the rug and feel guilt,
Oh,
or that it's my fault or something I did wrong the rest of my life. No, because there's other people suffering. And same with depression. Depression, we think, oh, I got to get rid of this depression. No, we got to lean into it instead of away from it, because there's a lot of creativity in depression where we can do like things we have done. You get out there, you get creative, and you figure out how to fix this in any way you possibly can try. And you may fail, but you're out here making noise and you're trying, and you don't know who that's affected. That's how I feel.
so what you just said there is profound. And I hope everyone plays it back and listens to that over and over again many times, because um, when I stopped being the advocate, I started being the therapist. I used all my years with Tony Robbins, being a master practitioner of NLP, and my father sports medicine, my mother naturopath, and also just listening to spirit. People started to come to me, and I would just listen. And the biggest thing, PTSD. I worked with a lot of military personnel and a lot of survivors of child sexual abuse. And the biggest thing is, you just said it. You have to speak it. You have to write it, and you have to get it outside of yourself. Because when you bottle it up, that's where the mental illness, and it's not even an illness. It's the mental anguish occurs, and the anguish is there because you're bottling it up. You're not letting it out and healing it in the process. So I believe that we can rewrite our past, and I think that we have different timelines here on this plane, and we can literally jump timelines. We can go, okay, not crazy about that timeline. I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to see things differently. I'm going to feel things differently, and I'm going to jump into a different timeline where I had a different past. And that's what's going to propel me moving forward. And it sounds kind of interesting, like, can you really do that? Absolutely, because it all starts up here, right? And when you rewrite, scribble out the past, like just scribble it out and go, okay, I'm throwing that in the cosmic garbage can. I'm not having that
And it doesn't mean
dialogue any
stop
longer.
talking about what hurts you, or, it means embrace it. And
Absolutely.
um,
And find what's good about it. Okay,
yeah,
so that's what I ask. Okay, what's good about that? We almost had
what good
a
came out
three-time
of it.
convicted pedophile after my daughter. What was good about that? Well, it forced me to speak out. It forced me to make a change in society. You know, a person that considered herself illiterate and dumb, I stepped out. I don't like talking in third person, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
I stepped out and I made a change. And only because I was pushed hard enough.
And our
When
NDEs do the same thing.
yeah,
They force us to, we
exactly.
come back, we're changed. We
Yes.
now want to speak up. We want to speak out. We no longer care what everybody else thinks. We have got to speak our truth before we die for good next time. Because we was on the other side. We know what that final feels
Amen.
like. And you can't undo
Yeah.
that. At least for me, I was dead and I thought
Well,
at 25, I thought, what did I do with my life? I kept quiet. I didn't tell people. And I didn't, like, I made no difference. And I think that's why we all want
I
to come
get
back
it.
and write a book. I
Yep.
do. They say,
And
oh,
that's why we write books. Yeah.
yeah. They say, oh, you into ears. You just want to make money off
Yeah.
books. Like, no, we come
Luckily,
back. We
my
got to
book
write a
won
book.
third in the world. Yeah,
We got to make our stand while we're still here. We got to be heard while we're still
absolutely.
here.
Yeah. Well, my book actually won third in the world for philosophy and spirituality. So it's
And
propelled
you didn't get
itself.
past 12th grade. Love it.
Well, it's propelled itself. Like I've never bought advertising for it or anything, but it's been a grassroots basis of being shared, family member to family member, friend to friend, and it has really taken off. Now, the big A, as I call it, the book publishing company that is massive, that sells everything on this planet and delivers to your door. The big A is banning. I shouldn't say ban, but it's censoring the sales of my book. Like right now in Canada, you can only order 3 copies. And I have people that order 10 copies for their family. They can't do that anymore. So they've limited the
Everything
sales.
Christian is being censored right now.
I know, right?
Podcasts,
Yes.
books,
Yeah. Yeah.
anything Christian.
And reviews. So I got a message yesterday from a beautiful young woman, and she wrote me and she said, I've tried to leave a review. I bought 4 books for my family members, and it made my mom cry. It healed her, you know, instantly, and it was so heartfelt. And so we tried to leave a review, and Amazon won't let us leave a review. And I wrote her back and I said, you're about the 10th person I've heard from that said this. And I haven't had a review online since 2021, which is kind of interesting. And it was in 2021 I went after Amazon for their $20,000 pillows that they were selling, that they were shape of butterfly, which the shape of a butterfly, of course, is a code. So there's a whole aspect to that. So
You
I thought it was interesting that in 2021, yeah, those reviews ended. And funny enough, well, not funny, but interesting enough, I just got another review recently, like last week, and it was horrific. It was a 1 out of 5. I never get 1 out of 5s. This book, I shouldn't say but this book never gets 1 out of 5s. It's always 4 and 5 out of 5s. But you could tell it was a bot or someone that, was paid to put stuff out,
A
right?
few years ago, I got about 10 bad book reviews, 1 stars in a week because it come out, which I wasn't hiding it, that I'm pro-life. And they hated
Yeah.
me for the NDE community hated me for it
Boom.
because they're trying to say, this is what they say, okay? They say, and they preach this like in their conferences and everything and on YouTube's, that all
Yep.
children that have been aborted speak to these people that channel spirits who've had NDEs. They're using NDEs to sell abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And they all wanted aborted so they could be reincarnated later. And I call bullshit on that. And they
Yeah.
banned me, they kicked me out of everything because I said I do not believe that spirits of aborted babies are telling you they wanted aborted and reincarnated later.
Right.
And I think it's wrong for you to use near-death experiences to
Yeah.
preach this. That was what I had to say. And that's
Yeah.
what I have to say.
Well, in my case, I don't believe that Penny wanted to be aborted. I think she wanted to come here. She wanted me to be her mama. And I had 2 different life paths. And one of them went this route, and it ended up being a route of change. And her abortion actually caused me to do all the work that I ended up doing, and probably saving millions of kids in the end.
And which is
So,
a tribute to her, you
right.
know?
And so, but I believe that some children that are aborted definitely are brought back within the same family lines. Now, whether they come as your children again or your grandchildren or great grandchildren, I believe that same spirit does return and comes
that may
back.
be. I don't know. Nobody can
Yep.
prove it. But so what I'm
No.
saying is for people to go on and preach. Oh, don't worry
Yeah.
about your abortion. Go ahead and do it because they'll be reincarnated later.
Yeah.
Like you
No.
give birth to that child later, or it'll be
Yeah.
your grandchild later. Don't worry about it. That's what I have a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't blame you on that one, because it's not something that you take lightly by any means. It's a life, right?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's your
And
child's life.
especially nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, nowadays
how
it's
can
gotten
we,
really interesting.
how can we
Yeah.
go and advocate for children's rights, victims' rights, or anything, and kill our own children? It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
people. We all make mistakes. We
I
all do
know.
things we can't take back. And the only thing we can do is like
Hmm.
what you're doing is own it
Hmm.
and do something for other children. I mean, my second
Absolutely.
NDE when I was with God, Jesus, and heaven, everything, throwing a fit, um, was because I had a dual pregnancy. I lost twins in that.
Mm.
I blame myself because when I was 20, my first husband forced me to get my tubes tied. 5 years later, somebody says, you have that reversed. You might as well have told me I want $1 billion in the lottery, because I always wanted 10 kids and he
That's how I
forced me to
felt.
do
Yeah.
that. And so I went and
Yeah.
had a reverse. And the doctor said, every woman has 5% chance of dual pregnancy. This will give you an extra 5. Month later, I'm not just pregnant, I'm praying for twins. I'm
Wow.
so happy. I fell to my knees out in the yard, yelling for my sister-in-law. I'm pregnant. This for twins. And ironically, she's a twin.
Yeah.
And so she came up, she was hugging me, and I was so happy. And
Yeah.
then I started having pain. And then anyway, I had a dual pregnancy and
Bleeding.
died
Yeah. Yeah.
in the hospital, in the emergency room.
Yeah.
And so, I'm screaming and all this. So I have guilt that I caused
Mm.
my twins to die because I had this. If I hadn't had the surgery, I wouldn't have the reversal, and I would have had twins probably because they run high in my family, and I would have 10 kids right now, probably a couple dozen such of twins, or a couple of such of twins. And so I blame myself. And so for an abortion, I can't imagine what
Do you still blame yourself though? Do you
they
still
can take
blame yourself?
Oh yeah,
Because I think
don't
that
even
in the
try
new,
to take it from me
yeah.
because everybody's tried. I do. I accept that
Well,
responsibility.
yeah,
I do.
yeah. Because I think that in my near-death experience, what they shared with me was that, um, it all comes down to, uh, well, I understand the guilt, but I also understand that everything does happen for a reason, and that today's tragedy is tomorrow's blessing. Because had you not gone through all of that, you wouldn't have adopted 10
Right.
kids,
We would be sitting here
right? You
talking about
adopted 10 kids,
this and trying to fight for
and we
children.
wouldn't be exactly.
Yeah.
And
You froze. Our energy got too high again. We froze up the computer. I hope you come back. Carrie, are you there? You got wound up and off topic, but it is topic. It's topic that matters more than death is the children and the.
aw,
Are you
there
there?
we go. I
I hope
am.
I didn't lose anything.
Yeah, yeah, let's hope. You're freezing up again.
I know we're freezing up. We better say goodbye so I can get
Okay.
this file. I hope I didn't lose anything. It says
I
internet
think I think
stable.
it's,
I think we had a
you know
storm.
what? Yeah.
Love talking
Okay.
to you.
So it was a pleasure
By your
speaking
life.
with you. And you know, it's funny how creator, like, all of a sudden there's technical glitches, and I was thinking I have to be finished 8 minutes ago. I have to get into the next
Okay.
appointment here. So
Okay.
so
I'm
yeah,
sorry. Let's
but
do this.
if you
Okay.
could share with everyone, my book is called The 5 Lessons of Life. If they can look that up. Right now, it is on Amazon still, but I am going to be selling it privately myself, and I'm taking it
Okay.
off all the big
Do you
networks.
have a
I'll just sell
website
it.
or something they can talk to you and buy it from
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Okay,
it's
give me that.
Carrie
And
Cohan. Yeah, carriecohan.com. But I'll say this, that I just hired an assistant about a week ago now, and I've been traveling all over the place doing book stuff. So It will be the end of this month. We've got another 15 days or so, and I'll have it up and running, the website. So right now, if you go onto it, it's very old and it's not working properly. Give me another 2 weeks. And so by the end of July 2023, it'll be tickety boo. You can go on there and it'll be
Well, I
functional
hope
for
that
you.
I watch your movie someday.
I hope so too, and
I want mine to
I'll
be a
be
movie
sending you
too. I paid
there we
someone to
go.
write the
Well, maybe we
script
could
and he
do a
didn't know what he's
series.
doing. Huh?
Oh,
It was
well,
all
we could do a
lies.
series.
My story
Absolutely.
has to be true to my
Yeah.
word. I opened up the first page and it's he's changed nobody said this. Nobody
Yeah.
did. None of that happened.
No.
It's garbage.
Yeah.
Complete waste of money and
Yeah.
time.
No, no, no. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So,
all
well,
right.
hopefully, yeah, I trust that everything will work out just beautifully. And who knows, maybe you'll see the story. If nothing else, you'll be able to read about it in the book. Yeah.
Okay.
Much love to
Yes,
you,
I'm going
honey.
to get your book.
Thanks again, Peggy. Take
Uh-huh.
care. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Take
All
care.
right, bye.
Bye now.